and welcome back to the Bodyful Minds Podcast. If you're tuning in January, chances are you're surrounded by conversations about food and exercise again. Resetting, getting back on track, doing better this year. And before we go any further, I want to say this clearly. There is nothing wrong with wanting to take care of your body. There is nothing wrong with wanting to feel stronger, clearer, more energized. But what I want to explore with you today is how we approach food and movement and from what place. Because the very same behavior can either support your nervous system or quietly deplete it even more. And that distinction matters a lot, especially if you're an ambitious mom carrying a lot already. So this episode is not about diets, it's not about weight loss, not about discipline or willpower. It's about support versus control and how your body responds to each. January tends to frame food and exercise as tools to change your body, to fix something, to get back in line, to compensate. And for many women, especially mothers, that framing lands on a nervous system that is already under load. So what looks like self-care on the surface can easily become another form of pressure underneath. Another place where you override signals instead of listening to them. And I want to offer a different lens today. Not as a nutrition expert or a doctor, because I'm neither, but from the perspective of body awareness, nervous system regulation, and as a former athlete for whom nutrition and movement have always mattered and will always matter. Not as ways to shape my body, but as ways to support my life and my health, mentally and physically. With this episode, I want to do two things. First, raise awareness around supporting your body rather than controlling it. And secondly, gently skim over a few nutritional myths that still linger even though science has moved on. This is not meant to be exhaustive or prescriptive in any way. Think of it as orientation, some coordinates you can work with if you want to or dig deeper into if your curiosity is sparked. And later, I'll also share a resource that I personally use. Not sponsored, not paid, just something I genuinely find helpful, and anyone who knows me can confirm that I'm simply a nerdy fangirl. But let's backtrack a little bit. So the reframe that has changed a lot for me personally and in my work with clients, food and movement are not tools of control. And I'll be honest, when I was younger, that is how I used them. That was also the dominant narrative in both culture and science at the time, especially when it came to women's bodies. But in reality, food and movements are inputs. They are ways of supporting your body so that it can support you. The focus shifts from what should I do to what helps my body function well under the demands of my life. That question already assumes respect. This is something many ambitious moms experience but rarely hear named. You can eat well, you can exercise regularly, and still feel exhausted, foggy, disconnected. Maybe you even notice your immune system isn't what it used to be. Maybe you're more injury prone. And then you assume you're doing it wrong or not consistently enough, or that you're just getting old. But very often the missing piece isn't effort. It's body awareness and nervous system regulation. Your nervous system has different needs depending on things like stress load, sleep debt, emotional activation, cognitive and mental load. What supports you in one state can undermine you in another. A hard workout can be regulating, or it can be another stressor. A very clean or strictly regulated way of eating can feel stabilizing, or it can increase vigilance and rigidity. Only you can tell which it is. Signs that something has tipped into control are things like feeling anxious when you can't follow your routine, feeling uncomfortable eating differently than planned, feeling like flexibility itself is stressful. So again, It's not the behavior that's the problem. It's the relationship to it. There's another layer here that many women, especially mothers in midlife, need to hear named, I think. Many of us grew up with the belief that slim equals healthy, that eating less, taking up less space, having a smaller body, especially as a woman, was inherently better. But what we understand today is very different. Health is far less about being slim and far more about being supported, fueled, and resilient. Strong is healthy. Stable is healthy. Metabolically supported is healthy. And let's look at something that often accompanies that slim equals healthy belief: calorie counting and chronic calorie deficits. When a body is consistently underfueled, especially a female body and especially in midlife, it doesn't interpret that as discipline. It interprets it as scarcity. From a physiological perspective, eating too little, particularly alongside high emotional, cognitive, or relational demand, signals a stressful environment. That signal elevates cortisol. And elevated cortisol doesn't just affect how stressed you feel, it changes how your body allocates energy and stores fat. One of the places cortisol drives fat storage is around the organs, what is called visceral fat. And visceral fat is not benign. It's strongly associated with chronic inflammation, cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. So paradoxically, chronic undereating can increase health risks even if weight stays low. Again, the body is protecting itself in what it perceives an environment of scarcity. This is where some popular January advice becomes especially problematic. And especially for women. Skipping breakfast, fasted exercise, training your body to burn fat. Much of this advice originally came from studies conducted almost exclusively on men. Male physiology responds differently to fasting and energy restriction. As research has evolved, what we see consistently is this. For many women, skipping breakfast or exercising in a fasted state reinforces the scarcity signal. It elevates stress hormones. It dysregulates blood sugar. And over time, it can undermine metabolic health rather than improve it. Breakfast plays an important signaling role, especially for women. It tells the body food is available, you're safe, you don't need to conserve. That signal matters far more than most of us were taught. Another belief many of us absorbed is that a sweet breakfast is fine because you'll be active afterwards anyway. But when a fasted body is hit with mostly refined carbohydrates, think croissant, pain au chocolat, sweet cereals, the blood sugar response can be very steep. A sharp spike followed by a drop. That roller coaster of blood sugar affects energy, focus, mood, as well as hunger later in the day. A breakfast that includes protein or has a large protein component creates a very different signal. It slows glucose absorption, it supports steadier blood sugar. Again, this isn't about rules. It's about understanding how the body interprets what we give it. I want to share how I approach food and movement myself, not as a prescription, but as an example of support without control. I'm a former athlete. I'm not a nutrition expert, but I follow developments closely and I care deeply about supporting my body and long-term health. Because I rely on my body to think clearly, regulate emotions, and show up at work as much as at home. So my focus is on things like supporting blood sugar stability by combining macronutrients, prioritizing fiber intake, around 25 grams or so per day, aiming for diversity, roughly 30 different plants per week or more, minimizing ultra-processed foods where possible without vilifying them, ensuring sufficient protein around like 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight, not because my body needs fixing, but because it needs the right kind of energy to function well. I sometimes use the analogy that you wouldn't fuel a diesel car with petrol and then be surprised when it doesn't run smoothly. I use the Zoe app as a support tool. And this part matters. I don't use it in a controlling way. I usually don't track when we go out to eat. I don't track at friends' houses. I don't weigh precisely anymore. I use it like I use my fitness tracker, as information, not authority, to notice patterns, to calibrate, to gently course correct if I feel that is necessary. Not as a moral compass, and not as something that overrides my lived experience. From a nervous system perspective, this distinction is huge. Tracking can either increase safety and awareness or increase vigilance and self-monitoring. The difference isn't the tool, it's the intent. So either you believe the tool or you believe and trust yourself. If food and movement become ways of proving something, compensating, or staying in line, your system reads that as pressure. But when they're framed as support, as resourcing, as collaboration with your body, your system softens. And that's when these practices actually help. This matters even more if you're someone who already carries responsibility, if you lead, if you decide, if you manage, if you hold things together. So yes, basically any mom. Your body doesn't need more discipline. It needs more connection and support. And that changes how we think about nourishment and movement entirely. So instead of asking, what should I eat? What workout should I do? I want to invite different questions. What would feel supportive for my body today? What would help me feel more nourished and strong? Am I choosing this to support myself or to override myself? You might choose to go deeper than this surface skim, to notice how foods make you feel, how your energy responds, how this shifts across your cycle. That's not obsession, that's healthy curiosity paired with self-trust. If January has you thinking about food or movement again, I hope this episode helps you approach them with more kindness and a different perspective. You don't need to control your body into cooperation. You can support it instead. And when your body feels supported, it becomes a powerful ally, not another project. Until next time, more you, less noise.